Hi everyone, so I am back after 8 months, 9 months, and I've been going through a lot of deep work for myself, and there's certain periods in our lives where we have to go inward, and so we can eventually take action outward, right? And in today's video, I want to talk about my story, my entire story up until now, up in 31. So my story begins at, I would say, around 3 years old. My parents got into a very nasty divorce, cops being called. I remember a lot of trauma going on, fights. Okay, then I was diagnosed at 6 years old with diabetes. I have type 1 diabetes. I've always been a diabetic. I've always had to control my blood sugar, make sure it's in range and everything. Then fast forward to 10 years old, and I started looking at on the computer. My brother introduced me to looking at porn on the computer, and I was hooked right away. I couldn't stop. My mind was totally fixated on the image on the computer, and I was young. I was 10 years old, and at nighttime, I would look at images on my computer, and my stepdad eventually found these images. Here's a young kid looking at these images, and a few years progress. I think I was off and on with it. And by the time I was in 7th grade, I started masturbating. I started looking at porn, masturbating, and then again, I was hooked. And I started doing this constantly every day. I would go and come home after school, masturbate, look at porn, the whole 9 yards. In these in-between times, there was a lot of fights with my parents. There was a lot of cops. Again, the cops still being called. They were separated, remarried. My brother, he took my mother to court because he made up lies about her, saying that she was beating him when she wasn't, because he wanted to go live with my dad. It was just a bunch of drama, a bunch of crazy stuff going on. But high school comes around, I start taking Adderall, and because I had a really hard time focusing and sitting there in school and concentrating, and it helped, but then I overused it and I couldn't stop using it. So I would take one, then two, then three, then snorting it. And I got through school, college comes around, I go to college, and this is where this is when everything started. So my brother, actually, he passed away in December of 2012. It was 13 years ago yesterday, from a heroin overdose, and we had no idea that he even was doing heroin, but he passed, and it was devastating. And I had no idea how to handle that situation. I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know the grieving process. I didn't know the stages of grief, and I didn't know how to move forward within my life. And I was already in my first semester of college. I was already doing, the Adderall, and I was looking at porn, the whole thing. And then it progressed even worse. So I started drinking more. I started taking the Adderall while drinking, and after he died, I didn't know if I wanted to go back to school. I went back to school, and then I started seeing escorts, and I started going on Backpage, and I started going on Craigslist, and my mind just spiraled into this dark, I would call it the dark night of the soul, which is where you go into this deep, dark place. And this happened from 2013 to about 2019, 20-ish, 21. But even then, I'll get to that. Even from 2021, 22 to like 24, I was still like in that deep, dark, like, what's going on? Like, when am I going to get out of this? So, but from 2013 to 2014, I got into a terrible car accident, and my blood sugar, my diabetes, it went low. And I was driving my car, and I hit something on the side of the road, and I shattered my hip. I had to get 9 pins in my hip and a plate. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I stopped the Adderall for 1 week, got out, started doing the Adderall all over again. And again, it was helping me in school, but I was living this totally double life on the side. I was seeing escorts. I was on Craigslist, having sex with people. I had no idea who these people were. I was just out of it. and I would be smoking weed at the same time while I was taking Adderall, smoking weed, looking at porn, and I was just a mess. I'd wake up tired. I wouldn't be able to focus in class, but I would have to keep taking Adderall to focus and take tests, and I was cheating in school to get through school, and it was, again, this was going on from 2013 to 2015, I'd say. Still going on through 2016. I graduated, and all that time, I was living this double life. I had internships. I got a job after college. I worked for a big company after college, and again, even at that company, I was still taking the stimulants, and I was still working, and I was going after work to the massage parlors, the escorts, the apps, and I couldn't get out of this cycle. I was like, what is going on? Like, how do I fix this? And then I would say, and then I was studying for my master's degree. I was going for my master's in finance. I thought I wanted to be in finance, but that was totally, I think the Adderall was taking over my brain. I wanted to do something that made a lot of money, and it's not really what I wanted deep down. I didn't even know who I was at this point. I was just like, whatever, I'll do whatever. So I studied for my GRE, got into my master's in 2017. In master's school, in my master's program, I thought I would do better GPA wise. I was working my ass off, but again, what was I doing? I was living a double life, and I couldn't focus totally on my program. So I would study. I left work. I left that full-time job to go study, and I was still acting out. And I remember before I started my master's program, I said to myself, I think I should go to rehab. And I was like, you know what? It's fine. I can get through it. I got through it barely. So from 2017, September to, I remember September of 2018, I was studying, doing my work. It was very difficult for me because school was very difficult for me, and I had to really focus. I was really focused, but I was not focused because I was living this whole different life, and I was always tired. I looked like shit, and I got an internship in Florida, and again, wasn't even going into the internship maybe like 2-3 times a week because some of the days I was so tired. And then I started taking the Adderall again, and it was just a mess. I was smoking the weed and the whole thing, and I was like, enough's enough. I have to go to rehab. So I remember coming back from Florida, and I'm like, Dad, Mom, I have to go to rehab. I can't do it. I had to go to them and tell them exactly what I was doing, and that was very hard. I had to tell my dad everything about the porn and the escorts and everything, and that was a very difficult conversation. It was very embarrassing. I was very ashamed, and I started going to NA meetings. So I went to Narcotics Anonymous, and I got a sponsor, and I had a whole group of people who were helping me, and I went to rehab for a month, and it was October to November of 2018. And I remember I got out, and I felt I didn't want to leave rehab. I wanted to stay, but I made a bad decision by not going to a halfway house. Didn't go to a halfway house, but I lived back at my father's house, and I relapsed again. I relapsed in December of that year, 2018, or January of 2019. I forget, but then it started, I had to get like a job. I didn't go back to my master's degree. I had to take a break. I went to go work for Amazon, and I was kind of slowly relapsing again. Like I was doing, smoking weed here and there, and then I started taking the Adderall again. Then I blew like a ton of money on Adderall, and what happened was I somehow was able to going back to the meetings. I had to keep going to the meetings, to NA meetings, and I couldn't understand what was going on. I was like, I don't know what to do. And I had to go to an outpatient program as well, and I had a whole group of people helping me out. And by the time the pandemic hit, I was trying to do better, and I was sober again for a little bit. Then I was on SSRIs, and then I started my freelance business. I started a freelance writing business, and then I started another job in 2021. I finished my master's program in 2020, tried to get a job. I was in a little accounting job, and then I started another job, and I got fired from that job. Again, I wasn't awake, and I still didn't know who Austin was at this time. And he he just didn't know. Like he was anxious, and his nervous system was all messed up. And by 2022, I moved to Florida. So I moved to Florida, and I met a whole group of people in yoga. I do hot yoga. I've been doing it since 2018. And between all that time from 2008 to 2000, up until last year, I was dating someone for 17 years. I was on and off for years with my ex-fiance. And I would always go back and forth. I couldn't make up my mind what I wanted. I had no idea what I wanted. I couldn't make up my mind. So in 2022, we were off and on. I came to Florida. I started going to ayahuasca ceremonies, and these actually started helping me. But this is where the work really began, was because I started seeing the deeper inner work that needed to come up. And what was coming up in these ceremonies that I was doing in 2022 and then 23 was I had a lot of trauma. Obviously, it comes up, but the issue with the porn, it was all coming up, and I was seeing this in these ceremonies. I was seeing things, and things were happening in those ceremonies that were happening actually in my life. So there were people there that actually acted as a mirror to me. So let's just say I had this wounded masculine and wounded feminine in me. So my wounded feminine is someone who they have to force everything. Everything has to be forced, and they have to, everything's on a timeline, and there's this wounded child within them. But then these people who are also in these ceremonies are a mirror to that. So what I call this phase of my life was this lower vibrational phase. And I was in a lower vibrational phase up until that time. I was acting out. And then I came to these ceremonies, and then I saw the wounded child in me also that was coming out in other people. And I didn't know this at the time. I thought it was oh, it's fine, it's okay. But as I kept going back to these ceremonies, what came up inside of me was the main lesson was I had to finally take my power back. I never had my power. I never had true power of myself. I never knew who Austin was. I never knew what he wanted, who he stood for, what he stood for. He just was there, and he was scattered and looking at porn and always fantasizing about women, the whole thing. It was extremely, very, very, it was a very dark. I went into the dark, into the abyss, and these ceremonies taught me a lot of lessons about myself. And I got back with my ex in 2022, and it showed me a mirror also what I didn't want in a relationship. And it was a lot of wounded masculine. So when I say wounded masculine, it's someone who is in almost like a survival mode, and they have to hustle, and they have to grind, and they have to have the power and the authority. There has to be a power, like an authority to people, to themselves, and there's no relaxed nervous system calm in that man, in that masculine. It's a wounded masculine, so he needs to have authority over people. He needs to have power. He needs to grind to get where he needs to go. And this is what I thought I needed to do as a man. But that's just a lower vibrational part of who I was. I was operating from a lower part of who I was in my wounded feminine. So I always had these masculine, feminine qualities, but they were distorted because we go through conditioning when we were younger, and these conditionings, they cloud everything. So I had to rip away everything. And by the time I departed from these ceremonies, because a lot of stuff happened, I met people there that I saw a mirror of myself, and my soul, I believe there is a timing for all of us to grow, and there's a timing for us to unfold in each event in our lives. And I do believe it was the right timing for me to leave that ceremony, because part of me was taking I call this the dark and the light. My light was starting to come in and take my power back. So after I departed from these ceremonies and I let everybody go from those ceremonies, I also left my ex. And that was a very hard decision, because I knew her for 17 years and it was the most difficult decision of my entire life. And that was 2 years ago. That was 30. I was 30 years old. A lot of fights were happening with her. Again, I didn't know who Austin was, and I was still trying to deconstruct my identity and then reconstruct it. So I left her, and that was very hard. That was very, very difficult, because my whole life just changed like this. So I come and I'm going to men's meetings. I'm going to not NA meetings anymore. I was done with the 12-step program. I did the 12 steps. That wasn't where everything stuck, but these ceremonies actually, when I look back, they actually helped me tremendously. So up until 30, I'm 31 now, so I'm 30, and I'm going to these men's meetings and everything, and then things start getting so much better. So I let all these toxic people go. I start taking my power back, so the energy starts rising up. I can feel the energy rising up, and I can feel this new masculine center come on, this new feminine quality inside of me, because I needed this calm nervous system, and I couldn't be in this survival mindset anymore. I mean, everybody who I knew in the past was always in this survival and always trying to achieve something. Whereas, yes, it's good to have, I'll explain this in a minute, but it's good to have goals, but you have to do it from a place of alignment with who you are. And if that means letting go of everything you've had in your life, then you might have to do that. And I've let go of people. I don't talk to a lot of people anymore. I started going to these new ceremonies, okay? And everything changed. Everything changed. Actually, let me rewind back last year. I started seeing someone who helped me dialogue and understand my sub-personality. So that's what I help my clients with. I help them with their sub-personalities, and I have them have a conversation with both sides of themselves, so the light and the dark, and I have them have a conversation with them so they can truly find where they need to go in life. Truly go in life, not what they think their mind thinks, but where they are supposed to go. And this really helped me. This opened my eyes, dialoguing and going, really digging deep within yourself. And what happened over all this time, and then I'm 30, I go back to these newer ceremonies. So think of the last ceremonies I went to, they showed me who I never wanted to become anymore. That was the identity I had to let go of. So I left that identity there, that was done. So everything just changed. And I went to these new ceremonies, and it's more of a higher vibrational ceremony. And it's where everybody is welcoming, and they're loving, and they're caring, and that's who I was in my heart. I'm a very caring, and I'm a grounded individual now. And if I saw myself 4 years ago, who was that person? Who was that person? I don't know who he was. But it's the identity reconstruction. This is and now coming up to this point, I can catch myself with my compulsive desires. They're still there. They're in my head, but I can immediately catch it and bring it back. And I can actually tap into my other, I developed an ability called channeling, and it helps me hear my higher self talk, and it's actually him in the driver's seat. So instead of my ego in the seat, who is always looking at porn, taking Adderall, hustling, grinding, survival, didn't have these divine qualities, now my higher self has come in and basically drives. It drives for me. And I can channel, and I can see what the best move is for me every day. I can structure my day however I want based on this ability. And I still catch my mind go back to, oh, we have to make more money, we have to do this, we have to, but it's like it's catching myself, and it's catching myself, oh, let's look at porn, but wait a sec, let me catch it. It's coming back to the light. So I've gone through the dark and I've come out to the other end, and I want to stay in the light now. The light is there, and I believe this whole transition in my life, it's a whole progression of your soul. And this is what I help men with. I help them through this entire transition. If they are in the dark, I help them climb out of the dark and find that light, that higher self of who they truly are. And it's truly like what I'm supposed to do. It's my dharma. It's what I call my purpose in this life, is to find and to truly help these individuals and guide them to the light. Because I think the world's going through a shift. There's this awakening, but there has to be people who know what the dark truly looks like and get them out of there step by step, who can guide them from the dark into it, like from the dark through it and then to the light. That's what my purpose is. And I also met the most lovely woman in the world, and it's just everything has come together. But the main lesson is surrender, and it's patience. If you surrender to whatever it is, whatever this thing we call life, if you surrender to it and you just allow whatever happens to you to happen, good, the worst of the worst, it's all meant to like guide you to a different way of life. And it's like you don't even have to, I would say, try or force the work, any spiritual work. It just kind of it just is like, it just happens to like open up itself. So now at this stage, I don't force myself to do any more to do any work I don't want to do. I stay aligned with who I am, and I do catch myself, but I have to bring him back. And this is what I help men do, is I help them bring him back, and I help them stay aligned with who they are. And the alignment is staying true to myself, my power, myself, and that's it. I mean, I do believe that there's a whole orchestration to this thing we call life, and we can't see it. It's something we can't comprehend with our minds, but your whole progression in your soul, everything works out as it should, I believe. And I'm a great example of it. I see it, and I'm still going through it right now. I'm still seeing new things come up and learning new things every day about myself, and understanding how everything is working, and it's incredible. But that is my story. It's been one hell of a journey, and I would love to hear anybody's thoughts in the comments. I would love to help you. If you click the link in my bio, I have a cool downloadable PDF where I help men find their divine qualities by letting go of porn. I was doing porn. I was helping people with porn addiction in the past, but now I'm helping them with compulsive behaviors. So more, it encompasses porn and scattered energy and scrolling, a bunch of stuff that can lead you to the darkness. So, but if you click that link in the bio, you can see I have a cool worksheet that helps you. And I would love to know what your thoughts are. But let me know in the comments what you thought. This is my journey, this is my story, and I this is the first time I really spoke about my journey to everyone. So thank you for listening, and have a great night.